We warn the criminal and anti-human enemy that revenge and blood vengeance for the martyred Imam and the martyrs of recent crimes is on the agenda of the country's armed force.
Tehran's latest revenge barrage is crippling Israel's security with a new class of missiles. Iran has now kicked off the 24th wave of its True Promise 4 operation, showcasing a never-seen-before missile. Questions are swirling over whether Israel was caught off guard in these latest strikes, as air raid alerts to civilians reportedly came late. The growing fear now is that Israel's air defense systems may be struggling to keep pace with Iran's next-generation missiles. Iran has launched a fresh wave of attacks on Israel, firing new ballistic missiles toward Tel Aviv and several other key areas across the country. According to an IRGC statement, every missile fired in the March 6th barrage successfully hit its designated target, at least from Tehran's perspective. This latest round of strikes, the 24th wave of True Promise 4, was launched under the religiously charged code name Mahdi. Air raid sirens blared across parts of southern and central Israel, while residents in Beersheba reported hearing several loud explosions. The IRGC claimed its missiles in Beersheba were aimed specifically at technology hubs, cybersecurity facilities, and military centers linked to Israel's war effort. IRGC-affiliated media reported that one Iranian missile struck Tel Aviv and then detonated a few minutes after impact, implying a delayed fuse or specialized warhead. Israeli media, however, said at least one missile was intercepted in the latest salvo and that there were no confirmed direct impact sites in populated areas. So far, there have been no reported injuries from this particular round of Iranian ballistic missile attacks, despite the alarms and explosions. The IRGC says its missile launches began almost immediately after Israel carried out strikes on targets in and around Tehran's Mehrabad airport. At the same time, Israel's Home Front Command appears to have issued noticeably shorter early warning times for incoming missile threats. In one case, an alert went out at 7:16 p.m. local time and sirens began wailing just 3 minutes later, giving residents limited time to react. Later that evening, a second warning came at 8:40 p.m., with sirens sounding only about a minute after the alert was issued. A third alert at 9:54 p.m. was followed by sirens just 2 minutes later, again showing a very tight window between detection and public warning. Earlier in the day, the gap between an early warning and the corresponding siren had been closer to 6 minutes, allowing more time for people to reach shelters. In previous missile barrages, the typical gap between initial alerts and sirens ranged from about 4 to 8 minutes, making the current shorter window stand out. Home front officials maintain that their goal is always to provide warnings several minutes before impact to maximize public safety. However, they admit this is not always possible, blaming factors such as late missile detection or unusual flight profiles for shorter warning times. The IRGC has emphasized that it is now using new generation missile systems in the latest waves of its True Promise 4 campaign. State-aligned media say these include both solid fuel and liquid fuel designs, aimed at Israeli territory and US bases across the region. Among the named systems are Khorramshahr 4, Kibar Shikan, Fattah, Imad, and Ghadr missiles, each covering different ranges and strike roles. Back in Iran, large fires were reported at Tehran's Mehrabad International Airport after Israel launched its own retaliatory strikes. The Israeli military described its operation as an extensive wave of attacks against what it called regime targets deep inside Iran. Meanwhile, the IRGC also released a fresh battlefield update, detailing its ongoing operations against both Israel and the United States, and signaling that its campaign of missile and drone attacks is far from over.
The sons of the Iranian nation in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, on the 7th day of the war and in continuation of the 22nd wave of Operation True Promise 4, dealt crushing blows to the enemy's structure. In this operation, The Americans and their equipment at the old Afra base were targeted with precision weapons. In addition to the destruction of the base's advanced radar, the hangars for the maintenance of MQ drones, U-2 aircraft, and the American Patriot system were also obliterated. The old Afra base in the UAE had been the source of the Americans' crime in the girls' school in Minab, where 165 innocent people were martyred. These operations against the base were carried out as retaliation against the American terrorists. During the attack on Al-Adir base, cruise and ballistic missiles were used to destroy the base's early warning radar, its auxiliary facilities, fuel depots, and both runways used by the Americans in their assaults on our country. In the past 2 days, the courageous soldiers of our nation, in 2 waves of combined attacks, completely destroyed the radar and air traffic control systems, satellite communication facilities, and fuel supply depots of the Al-Adir Air Base using kamikaze drones and ballistic missiles. Meanwhile, in the attack on the American base at Erbil Airport, 11 Americans have so far been killed. The occupied territories were also struck by Kibar-e-Shikan missiles from the Aerospace Force of the IRGC. In addition, one of the headquarters belonging to separatist groups in the Kurdistan region was hit and destroyed. Furthermore, following a combined drone and missile operation targeting objectives in the occupied territories and American bases across the region on Friday night, under the operational code O Master of Time, the 23rd wave of Operation True Promise 4 began. The ground and naval forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran launched a new wave of drone attacks targeting American bases in the occupied territories. Since the early hours of Friday, the Navy has been launching heavy fire at enemy concentration points, U.S. bases, and equipment in Minhad, Camp Rivjan, and sites within the occupied territories of the Zionist regime. The pure blood of our martyred comrades from the beloved Dina vessel flows in the veins of the Navy's brave men. This battle will continue until the enemy is forced into regret. We warn the criminal and inhumane enemy. The vengeance and retribution for the martyred Imam and the victims of recent atrocities remain the top priority of our armed forces. The remembrance of these precious martyrs is the very reason that the blood of our self-sacrificing soldiers continues to surge.